What's up, everyone? Welcome to Legacy Building with AV. My name is Holly. My co-host is Dr. Gavin Adams. Before we begin, we would just like to ask you if you could please subscribe, like, and share this channel. It will help us to grow and also invite other guests that could share their insights and provide the value that you may need to get to the next level in your own endeavors. So with that being said, we'd like to introduce a guest all the way from Georgia, who has taken the time out of her busy day to spend with us, and we appreciate it so heartedly.
Happy to be
She is
here.
a mother, she is a wife, she is an investor, international investor at that, and a realtor in the Georgia and Costa Rica areas. So definitely tune in. We're excited to have you. Shaletha Litt Colbert, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here. I feel like I
So
need to explain this in the background.
the
I went to
snake.
FAMU. Do I need to say more?
Okay, okay, fam, you in
I'm
the
a
house.
sometimes that throws people off, and I'm like, let me. I'm
Why
a
she gotta
very
speak
proud
up?
rattler.
That's what's up. That's awesome. So were you born and raised in Florida area?
No, actually, that's part of my story. I was a military brat, so I was born in Germany, and I grew up in England and Japan.
Oh my
Yes,
God,
I
that's
was recruited to FAMU
crazy.
all the way from Japan.
What? That's insane. I'm actually a military spouse myself, so oh my God,
Okay.
that's cool. We got that in common.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
about that life.
moving is a lot. We haven't gone international yet, but I'm excited. How was living in Japan, like growing up there?
So I've been quite a few places, and Japan is hands down my favorite country. If I could live there now, I would. We're actually contemplating 40th birthday or a trip to Japan this year. And I'm leaning toward going back to Tokyo. Like that's how
Yeah.
much I love it. So it was amazing, an innovative country. I was safe. I felt safe at all times, which is a big thing to not take for granted. I love the food. I miss the people, the culture. It was amazing.
I bet it really was amazing. I've been to Tokyo one time, and I actually have a crazy story that came to mind. But I noticed that the culture there is so different from America. I was at a restaurant, and out of nowhere, this guy got in like a heated argument, and the
Mm-hmm.
whole restaurant went silent, and he stopped
Yeah.
like that's accountability next level. Like holding your citizen to a standard that you will not conduct
Yes.
yourself in certain way. Like I loved it. And it's such a big city and clean compared to New York City. I thought it was clean compared to New York.
Yes.
Hey, no New York hate. No New York hate here.
Man, no,
Ah,
it's not New
I
York hate. It's,
forgot.
it's more so like that's the only thing a lot of people can compare it to when you think of like a big populated city. It's like that, but there's no rats, there's no violence, and the homeless people are resigned to a different area. It's just different. It's different for sure.
It
Nothing
really It
equals.
really is different. So getting into like what you're currently doing now, like what inspired you to start pursuing your passion and what was the defining moment that set you on this path?
So I have always been interested in real estate. My mom was an investor when I was in high school, but it was so long distance that I knew that she did it, but what it looked like to me was she sent this guy some money and they bought a house in Florida. And like that was the extent of it. We weren't down there hands on, like she didn't even see the property. It was more so a teacher referred her and she just put some money in it. So that's what it looked like to me growing up. But other than that, I wasn't like, curious about that part. But when it was the Super Bowl came to Atlanta, I owned my primary residence at the time. And I'd been hearing about Airbnb. And I was like, oh, okay, let me see. People are renting their homes for like $500 a night. Like I could put my stuff in the closet and stay at my friend's house. And that's what we did. And so that was my first experience with renting. Like while I was living in the condo, I dabbled with like, friends staying the night for a while, like people who needed somewhere to stay, but it was never like a full on landlord roommate situation. And so that was my first time like trying something like that. And we got bit by the bug. We made $2,000 in like 4 days. And it was like, oh, that's dope. Like we need to now do this intentionally. So we bought our first rental in 2020, and it was a short-term rental, and that's where we got our experience in that. And then just the experience of having that extra income and meeting all these interesting people, it was just something that was really fun. And we're like, okay, we want to kind of do more of this. But we were having all of the issues with like HOA and things of that nature. So it was like kind of building the plane as we fly it. We were learning about, you need to read the covenants, and, these things could happen. And so it was just a really, really, a lot of learning experiences. I say no losses, but lessons learned. And when we decided to move out of the former primary residence and keep that as a rental, that was, now we're growing our portfolio. Now we're being more strategic. So now we're learning about the tax implications and things like that. And I was like, well, when we're looking for these properties, the next one to buy, I want to actually work with an investor-friendly agent. What happens is a lot of people will work with the agents that showed them their primary residence, not realizing that there's a lot more resources and things of that nature that people will need. And so kind of bringing it all around, as we were going through that experience of intentionally looking for like a short-term rental in a strategic area and asking these questions, we realized that people will raise their hand and say that they're investor friendly, and then they don't know the first thing about it. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to be the change. I had a background in mortgage lending. We now had 3 properties under our belt and some experience. And I'm like, I can do this. So I got my license, and then I started representing others, wanting to bring the experience that I've actually lived to the table to help clients who wanted to do the same.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Like, so are you currently still doing the mortgage lending, or have you strictly become like more the real estate and investor?
Real estate investor.
That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. That's like, I have so many questions going in my head, and I'm like, which question do I choose first?
It's
Um,
almost like a cheat code, right? So now you can get money directly from the lender. You can figure out who has the best rates,
Mm-hmm.
and you once you find something that's suitable for you, you don't have to put it on the market for others.
Exactly, exactly. I started out with wanting to be the representation that we needed, saving money on commissions, being able to use that to negotiate, getting the extra tax write-offs now as an entrepreneur, being able to check the box as a short-term rental operator, which is also a tax write-off. It did so many things to offset our income, and then increase it as well. So I was like, people need to know about this. Like, that's really how I felt. People need to know about this. And then tapping into the non-conventional real estate, the wholesale partners and things like that, having flippers where before that house even has to go on the market, I've got a buyer for that seller. Situations like that, just through networking as an investor, have really elevated me as an agent and being able to provide more service to my clients.
so do you feel like doing the Airbnb route is better than doing the traditional like rental, or do you feel like it's based on the person's risk tolerance?
For my personal goals, I say short-term rentals, midterm rentals are better, but I don't project, my income goals and my plans for the future and my timelines onto my clients. So one of the first things I do is we establish what their why is and then what the goals are associated with that. And so if they've got time, like they're comfortable in their job, or, maybe they're an entrepreneur and they're just like, I need to offset my income, whatever their situation looks like, it may be a long-term rental situation where it's kind of just a set it and forget it. They're just trying to build equity. They're not really worried about the monthly income. They just want an asset type of thing. That might work for them because it's really hands off. But for someone who's got more aggressive goals, like I need to make this much money in this amount of time, or I'm trying to leave corporate, I need to replace my income, short-term rentals are going to be the highest income return.
So,
That's
what are some challenges that you've experienced with the short
Mm-hmm.
term with short-term rentals, and how did you overcome those challenges? But also, what are some challenges with regards to being a mortgage broker, and then how did you overcome those as well?
Sure. So to be clear, I'm not currently a mortgage broker anymore. That's kind of how I got a start in real estate on the banking side. But from a short-term rental, challenges. I'm gonna, because there's a lot, because we didn't have a mentor. We were just winging it. When I tell you, building the plane as we were flying it. I would say the legal side of things, being in compliance, because our first 2 rentals were condos. So they had full-fledged HOAs, the nosy neighbors, the Karens, all of that. And that cost us. We had to hire an attorney at one point to fight a situation. We were getting HOA fines, conflict between our guests and neighbors, situations that were uncomfortable because of the type of property we had. So we had to sell those. We sold one already and bought a townhome so in a community where we didn't have those restrictions. And then we also are selling the other one now. We had switched our strategy on that. But because we want to ramp up our income, we're wanting to do all short-term rentals. So we're having to be more strategic when we search for new properties and sell off some that were decent income makers, but we didn't want to have to deal with those situations again with the neighbors and lawyers and HOAs and things of that nature. Other challenges would be when I was doing the long-term renting, again, had a legal situation over a security deposit. That was a very, very good learning experience where I realized a lot of these renters that have been long-time, lifetime renters, they are significantly more educated on landlord-tenant rights than someone who's just getting started. So even though it may seem like that 12-month lease thing is really, hands-off and easygoing, you need to do a lot of your work on the front end with screening and due diligence and knowing how to identify red flags, because one of the biggest ones that seems appealing to most people is them bringing a lot of money on the front end. I'll pay 90 days of rent up front. That sounds great. Most people are like, yes, this is going to be a perfect tenant because they're cash heavy for a reason. This is a bargaining and they're going to pay that 90 days. They about to squat after that, whatever the situation is. And that 90-day mark is an indicator, but someone who's just getting started may think, oh, this is amazing, So we have those situations we've learned from in the past that I think while they were, an issue at the time, they were definitely lessons well learned and a big part of why we've changed our rental strategy to short-term and midterm rentals. As a mortgage loan officer, I think for me, I did my own underwriting at the time when I was with the bank, and there's having to separate the human element. There's empathy and then there's professionalism. And I can understand how, one of the housing crises that happened, I think it was the 2008, 2012 one, where underwriting was just too lax. People were getting loans that they really didn't qualify for, things that didn't make sense for, why they were purchasing the home. And you can want to do stuff like that when you've got that person right in front of you. They're telling you their story, their hopes and dreams. They're looking for a second chance, even though their credit doesn't say they're deserving of one, and having to learn how to use discretion, because I am highly empathetic. I wanted to give everybody a loan,
I hear you.
I understand. I hear you. That sounds very, like something that I could understand happening, all of these situations. That's relatable. And having to realize like these guidelines are in place for a reason. Sometimes you have to protect people from themselves. So that was a challenge for me a little bit with getting to know my clients. And it wasn't just a order taker process. They were people who I got to know and I understood their circumstances. And sometimes I had to tell them no, or I had to come up with a different arrangement, maybe less or something like that for them.
Yeah, I can see how that could get emotional and like you wanting to help and do the best you can, but it's like sometimes you just gotta tell them no. Keep saving, keep fixing your credit.
Yes.
That is tough. That is tough.
Mm-hmm. Especially when I had that authority.
Oh yeah, yeah. Having that power to like say no, it's like they're like, why are you doing this to me? And it's like, well, you should have.
Feels very personal.
I hear you. So, like, with the short-term rentals, like, what is something you look for when you're selecting an area?
So, for my strategy is wanting to differentiate my rentals. So, there's people who will steer away from areas like, oh, they're saturated, everybody's in this market, and I don't run from those. Instead, I just know how to look for the gaps in service. So, for me, all of my rentals right now are by the Atlanta Braves Stadium in Cobb County. And that's a big draw. I mean, it's a stadium, but now they've built out around it where it's like a community outside of that. They've got a theater, they've got restaurants and entertainment. So people hang out, during the off season, the place is still packed. And so it's a big draw. It also sits near the interstates, two major interstates in Atlanta, 285 that goes around the perimeter and 75 that goes down the middle. And so anything around that area that allows short-term rentals and is within a 10-minute or so drive is gold. It really is. The other thing I look for is, so we have the constant traffic of the short term because they do like tournaments and things like that, concerts and stuff. But there's also a lot of employers in the area. There's a lot of companies that are headquartered there. So they have employees that come down for events, need somewhere to stay, don't necessarily want to stay in the hotel. And I mean, everything you can think of. There's universities there, there's a military base. So all of this is in a small radius. And so you kind of can't miss because you're going to have what I call plan A, B, and C. My plan A is the short-term rentals. Plan B is the midterm where people stay for a few months. Not as much income, but less turnover and, less occupancy challenge when they stay for a few months. And then plan C is if all else fails and I have to throw somebody in there for 12 months, the mortgage will at least be paid. You can check all of those boxes in that county because there are also good schools there. So it's going to attract long-term renters and families as well.
That's awesome. So you really did your due diligence, girl.
I know that market. I know that market very well.
So do you also lean towards, I guess it sounds like some of it leans towards like corporate leasing, like with the whole
Yes.
companies and stuff?
Yes. So I have a term that I've coined called flexi rentals. I'm getting it with trademark, patent, whatever it is now. But basically it's a rental strategy to maximize the income you can make on a property. And so it leads with midterm rentals, like the ones that are for a few months, because occupancy is the name of the game. Like, you want to not have to be looking for that next person that's going to be staying there. So the longer ones were longer than 30 days, less than a year, typically. People that would fall into that category are maybe someone who's in town filming a movie, they're here, or someone who's in town for a construction project, or a local family. Maybe they had some damage from a storm or, a pipe burst in their home and they need somewhere to stay for a few months. Someone who sold their home and they need somewhere to stay until they buy the next one. Those are typically the long-term tenants that we look for. I mean, the midterm tenants we look for. And then when we know that lease is going to end, maybe about 2 to 3 weeks out, we put it back on for short-term rental marketing just to fill that gap in between. So I'm doing that on one of my properties right now. I call the Georgia Home. It's a group of students that come 3 times a year. We have a contract with their employer, and it's a local restaurant entertainment space. And when we know the students are going to be here, we just block the calendar. We make very good money, $7,500 a month from this group of students on a single family ranch. And then when they're gone, we open it back up on Airbnb, Verbo, and those platforms, and just, keep it booked that way. And we've already got the calendar blocked for when they're coming again in May. And so we've been just doing that rotation and keeping it occupied and wanting to employ that strategy across our portfolio.
That sounds amazing. So do you help, like if someone wanted to basically have you mentor them, would you walk them through the process of actually like setting up the Airbnb, finding the cleaning service and all that stuff that goes into it?
Absolutely. So I have different ways that people can partner with me. I have an ebook, Mastering Midterm Rentals, where it's not that ebook that's 5 pages. Like this thing is like 50 something pages. So it's a mixture of research and my personal experience and refined in this very lengthy ebook that's detailed about how to research your market, how to negotiate a deal, how to determine your target audience and how to reach them, how to even decorate and provide amenities for that particular market. An example would be lots of people like nurses. Oh, I want to attract nurses. Well, how do you make your rental stand out to a nurse? Understand what they need in the place that they're staying. Light blocking curtains, sound machines, because they need to sleep during the day. Menus for local restaurants, maybe someone who does meal prepping, make that connection for them. Understanding your audience so that you can nail it and show just how much you understand them, that you won't have challenges with occupancy. So I have all of this outlined in a book, but I do one-on-one coaching. And then as a real estate agent, I can help people with, sourcing that property. And, especially if they're local, I come out on site. I've helped clients from finding a flip to referring my contractor, getting the flip done, refinancing it if they decide to hold it, and then helping them with furnishing it and everything. I have a client who just furnished his entire 3-bed, 2-bath property for under $5,000. And he's got it on Airbnb and he's cleaning himself and he's already refinanced it and ready to buy the next property. And, he hasn't paid me anything. He was my client. I was his real estate agent.
That is sweet. Talking about delivering, going above and beyond.
I
Okay.
enjoy it. No investor left behind.
You live and embody that for sure. So moving along, like how do you define success and has that definition changed over time?
Oh, yes. Yes, yes. When I was what society would probably have considered most successful, when I was the loan officer, I was also a branch manager at 25 years old. Yeah, that sounds really successful. That sounds like, great income. And I worked hard to get there. Having my MBA and being a partner at a firm, those experiences, I used to think that was success. I worked really, really hard to achieve that. But I also look back and realize I was the most unhappiest that I was in my life and what I was giving up, to chase that success, to climb that ladder. And even though I could see it, it had to be taken from me because that was my comfort zone was living in, being able to check the boxes. I'm making this much income. I've, achieved this level at work or whatever it was. But it was just taking so much and there wasn't time to do things that I actually enjoy. And so the carpet had to be snatched from under me. And now what I feel is successful is building this portfolio where I took these risks on myself. I cashed in my retirement and I went all in on, I'm going to bet on me so I don't have to go back to corporate. And this feels like success, waking up and getting dressed at 11 o'clock, starting my day when I'm
Yeah.
ready. My son doesn't have to go to daycare. I'm with him 24/7. He's very much involved in our business. This feels like success to me now, like doing life on my terms. It's not as much about the financial part of it or, appearances. I achieved this in corporate. It's what does my life really feel like versus what it may look like to others.
That is wholeheartedly 100%. Like your story just resonates so much because there's so many people that this week alone, there's actually
Mm-hmm.
someone that we interviewed the last season that they've been able to walk away from their job and just saying the same thing you've been saying that yes, they had a lot of success and they had reached high levels within their companies, but it just wasn't fulfilling enough to the point where they decide to venture out on their own and bet on themselves. And it's like you've already shown through corporate America that you can reach the highest level. So just applying that principles and that dedication to your own business, it's like it's a no-brainer. It's about to work. It's
It's different. It's real different. You do realize like why corporate felt safe. There's people in
mm-hmm.
these roles, but when you're building something for yourself, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Oh, I believe it, girl. I believe it. There's
it's
stressors that
yeah,
it's like,
exercise of
why?
discipline and sacrifice and tenacity and all of the things.
I hear you for sure. Um, so what impact do you hope to leave behind, and how are you actively building your legacy?
Um, so it's funny that you asked that because somebody asked me recently, like, what is my brand or like with how I dress or how I come across, what is it that I'm trying to give? And the first thing that like came to mind was like approachable. And it's because like I feel like I could have been further in my journey if I had a mentor. And I remember even when we started being intentional about looking for one, it was just kind of hard to see through the salesy stuff, like the success stories and like, well, what's your real story? Like what struggles did you have? Kind of side eyeing some of these people who had this success with no struggle, or at least it appears that way. And so my first thing was I want to be approachable. I want people to feel like my story resonates with them. I want to be relatable. I want people to ask me questions about how I got here because I don't gatekeep. I don't think there's any benefit. It's like a candle. It doesn't dim my light any to share my light with someone else. And so that's what I want my legacy to be is educating the people who feel like real estate investing is out of reach for them. They feel like they don't have the education or they don't have anyone in their circle or their community that can teach them the things and be patient with them and hold their hand through the process and not just try to take their money. Like I said, my client, he owns his own home and that was it. He does Turno and he wanted to get into real estate investing. And he found me on Facebook and we had a conversation. He's like, just talking to you, I can tell you're down to earth. Like, I want to do this. And he listened. He just, he trusted me and he listened and he's another success story. And it didn't cost him anything from me. One of my fondest memories is I was in a neighborhood in Decatur here, about to do an open house, and I was putting out my signs on the street corners, and I was at a gas station, and my husband and my son are in the car because they come show support. And this guy saw me putting out my sign, and he pulled over, him and his girlfriend. I think they're coming from like a laundromat, and they're like, "Are you a real estate agent?" And she's like, "I just wanted to talk to you because you were Black." Like she said, you know, we've got questions like, you know, I know you like putting your signs out or whatever. Maybe we can come by the open house and talk, but you know, we want to buy our first home and we're renting. And like that man still follows me to this day, and I'm working with him for his credit. Like, but it was just, you know, that made my soul like sing, like, yes, that's what I want to be. Like, I don't want to be that person that's luxury and all of that. And they're like, yeah, I'm not going to stop. She probably wouldn't talk to me. I want to be the one that people come to find out, because it's changed my life. I know the impact it can have on others. So I want that to be my legacy. When I say no investor left behind, I really mean that.
I love that. And I believe it so wholeheartedly. Like this one of the reasons why we start this channel. Like honestly, I'm really shy. I'm like the quiet person. I could be outgoing, don't get me wrong. If I'm with the right crowd, I could turn up. But like normally I'm more reserved, and this is like putting me out of my comfort zone. But I love
Kudos to
everything
you.
you. Yes, because it's like you don't need to dim your light. You could share the knowledge, and it just resonates. And I feel like because of that, that's going to help your platform grow so much. Just being welcoming and opening and inviting, that is just a matter of time. It's just going to go explode. And I'll be like, I met her.
Well, I got on TikTok last night, so we'll see what happens. I am a dinosaur when it comes to technology, so I'm sure that I'm missing out on some things, but it's been a fun journey, and I'm accessible to people right now. Like I have my phone number on Instagram, you know, and people have called and like, "Is this really you?" Yeah, it's me for a limited time. That's I don't want to get too big where people feel like, oh, you know, can't reach her, or you know, she's not accessible, and no longer helping people. I don't want that to ever not be a part of the mission.
So what was a pivotal lesson that you learned during your journey, and what did you take from that?
Ooh, pivotal lesson. I think it's a summation of experience, from even back with the mortgage lending and being a branch manager, to now being a landlord, short-term rental owner, and a business owner. It's never personal. Like I'm if I take a personality test, I'm going to be 99 something percentile empathy. So like,
were you always that way, or was there an experience that shaped that?
no, I've always been that way. Like commercials can make me cry. I'm a Cancer. I don't know if it's horoscope, what, but like I really believe in being humane and just seeing the human in other people. And sometimes it's easy to project my good intentions or my thoughts or how I am onto someone else when they may not, you know, have those same intentions. And it's impacted business, where I've given people the benefit of the doubt, where maybe my gut was saying, you know, this may not be the situation to be nice in. And so I've had to learn how to make sure that I'm respecting my own business, that this isn't personal, that these things do cost us. We have to make decisions that we can stand on. And standing on business means taking people to court. Like, you know, when you try to nicely have that conversation, it means holding people accountable to contracts and leases. You know, even when I've made a decision to waive somebody's late fee on a lease, I'm still going to send them that notice. You were still late on your rent. I'm still going to document it. And then I'm going to document that I waived it, but you're still going to get this notice. And that may be a little uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it. You know, these situations, because you never know what people are really capable of. And sometimes the situation may start out with the best of intentions, and their circumstances may change. And now they're trying to, you know, change something in the contract, or they can't meet their obligations, and they're making it seem like you're the enemy, but you didn't create the circumstances. So I'm just standing on business, contracts, legal help. I stay in my lane, and I'm not afraid to call an attorney.
So what advice would you give someone who has more of a challenge with getting started?
I would want to first determine what that challenge is with getting started, because it could be a number of resources available to them. So I would want to really hone in on what is it that's holding you up. You know, if it's the money, let's figure that out. If it's your credit, let's figure that out. If it's lack of mentorship or knowing what to do, we can figure that out. There's just too many resources available. It's a matter of just finding them and getting connected. But everything is figure outable.
That is true. That is true. Well, everything you were saying before, I was gonna say, I had a history professor and his motto was like, or motto, whatever, was like trust but verify. So it's like
Yes,
always lead with love, but always make sure you double check and make sure that it's accurate, hold people accountable, but you don't have to be like nasty about it. You could be nice and
exactly.
kind. Like, I really do love that.
I say inspect what you expect. That was the phrase that I learned in corporate, but same concept, like don't assume people are going to do what they said they were going to do. Hold them accountable every time.
For sure. So, do you feel like in doing the real estate, is it hard to hold like buyers accountable to like go through the process? Not sure if I'm wording that right, because I'm pretty sure you get clients that are like, I want to buy a house, and then they go steal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so there's ways to kind of weed that out. When I first was getting started, I was just happy to have any opportunity. So I liked getting, going and showing 20 homes to a person because it's content, and this is a chance to be out and about, and I hope this pans out for something, but kind of just learning as we go. And I felt like it was a trade-off because that person's taking a risk with me being a new agent as well. But now, absolutely, I am a lot more protective of my time and intentional, and so there's things that you can do to kind of weed out those people who aren't ready yet, but maybe they have a passing interest. One of those is having them get a pre-approval, pulling your credit and going through that process. And it's tedious enough that somebody needs to be serious enough to do that. So that's usually a good indication. How much research they've done. Do they have criteria that they've narrowed down? Because if somebody's saying it's too broad, you need to do a little bit more looking around or a little bit more research. So, because I can't go take you to see 500 homes, and it needs to be, a certain amount. So I've even limited that now, because when people think you're willing to go show them 20 homes, they'll take you to 20 homes. But when you're saying, all right, my cap is 7 homes, or after that, you're paying me per showing, they're going to be more strategic now. They're going to want to see the ones that they really want to see versus, others. I've been those experiences where you get out there and like, I don't really like this neighborhood. You could have drove to this neighborhood by yourself.
For sure.
You need, or this yard. This yard was in the pictures. Like,
Yeah.
so don't have me drive out to open a door for something that you could have self-determined was this cuts off the list. Don't. So now I found ways to kind of narrow it down and determine if somebody's really serious about it, and if not, cut bait and move on. I
Well, that's
charge a
good.
transaction fee now as well.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You have to charge for your time so people can value
Absolutely.
it.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
with everything you said, like, what advice would you give someone who is struggling to take the first step towards their passion?
Towards their passion in general, I would say find inspiration. Like find someone who's done it, whose story resonates with you. That could mean they look like you. That could mean they're the same race or gender. That could mean maybe they went to the same school as you, something where, you feel it's in common, and surround yourself with that, because, there is a certain amount of what you focus on and put out there into the atmosphere, like the universe is sending it back to you. So keep surrounding yourself with that inspiration, because there will be a moment of, if them, why not me? And I'm saying this from experience. During COVID, my husband and I were both working from home and cooped up in the room, wanting to work together because we're clingy. And he didn't want to watch Snapped Marathon all days because that's my jam, and I didn't want to watch like sports all day or the news, which was his thing. Trump's voice was triggering to me at that point. And so I was like, we can't watch the news. What's our happy medium? We settled on HGTV.
I
And
love
so it was
HGTV.
intended to just kind of be background noise. They have it at the doctor's office, and then, where you're waiting in the waiting room somewhere. So it's kind of background noise. But at some point, we started paying attention. Like we hear, like, wait, how much they pay for that house? Or where did they go? And, oh, we've been to that city. We started paying attention more. And within a year, we were taking trips to go find places to call a second home, because we saw enough stories of other people whose situations felt relatable. Like, oh,
Mhm.
they have a kid, or oh, their budget is only this, or this is their reason why, or this is what they're looking for in a second home. I can get with that. And so we went and did our tour, and that's what led us in large part to being in Costa Rica and being in the mindset to let's look for a house here. and we were only there for 2 weeks and left under contract. And that was almost 3 years ago now. And it was watching
That's crazy.
HGTV and just putting that out there. It wasn't as intentional as some people may think it was. It was just like a passing idea that we started really entertaining.
So Costa Rica, huh? That's
Yeah.
insane. I love it there. Pura vida.
Pura vida.
Oh
It's
my God. So,
amazing.
so do you focus on properties that are near the water in Costa Rica or like more in the jungle or I guess in the mountains? I don't know.
Yeah, because there's all kinds of terrain
Yeah.
there. But the other thing is, in addition to terrain, the coast and different parts of the country have different cultures.
Mhm.
It's kind of like how in the US, there's Southern hospitality, there's the New York state of mind, and then there's, Cali. It's kind of like that in Costa Rica, and I've never experienced that in another country. Like the side that I'm on is on the Pacific side, and it feels kind of like an extension of South California or something. And the town
Mhm.
I'm in feels like just a small beach town, like Panama City or Pensacola. There's families there, people go surf. It's real chill. It feels like somewhere you go for spring break. But then there's the East Coast, which is the Caribbean coast. So it's like, over where Jamaica is. And people are always surprised to hear this. They have carnival there. Like
No
yes,
way.
they have jerk chicken. They have and there is a whole community, like an Afro-Caribbean community on that coast of Costa Rica. Completely different vibe. And then in the center of the city, like where San Jose is, the capital, it's an international city. It's all sidewalks and Starbucks, and people are speaking different languages. It's the elites from different countries that are working there for their companies headquartered there.
Mhm.
Things like that. So then there's the mountains and the terrain of the jungles and stuff, and treehouse people that are really just like hippie, live off the land, yogis. Like,
Yeah.
so it's something for everyone there. But for us, we wanted something that wasn't going to be too difficult to acclimate to. I mean, we're in Atlanta. There's a lot of conveniences here. No, I don't want to wake up in a treehouse with a sloth on my bed. Like, like tarantulas in the bathroom. I'm not down for that. I have a son, and yeah, so we were like, we want to go to the beach. We want to go to restaurants occasionally. So that's what we were looking for. Like, if we decide to put him in school there, what does that look like? Is this somewhere we feel like we can build a community? There's enough Americans there, people that we've met over the last 3 years, where we actually, meet up with people when we go back and stuff. So we've kind of started building a life there for ourselves. But other people who may be looking for different things, I may recommend a different part of the country to them.
Well, it sounds like you might just be moving to Costa Rica soon.
This morning we're like, all right, we got to talk about residency. So we've got our documents together, and that's the next step of the process that we're about to document.
Oh my God, that's exciting. I'll definitely be following along. So if
Yeah,
you could
this time.
remember, it is. Um, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be and why?
So similar to the question earlier, like what my legacy would be, it is making that impact on other people's lives. If it's motivating them, even if it's not real estate specific, if it's motivating them to chase a dream and bet on themselves and it pans off, I want to be that inspiration to people. I want to show them that what they think is just a dream can be their reality, and not just show them, but help them where I can.
I love that. I love that. And I feel like it will definitely go into fruition. It will come about like you're already setting everything in motion. And I just enjoy this interview so much, like listening to you talk and sharing like your knowledge. It's been awesome. It really is.
Thank you. Real estate is lit. That's what I want to be remembered
You
for.
are lit. I love that that's your name too. I don't know if you watch Suits, but they have
Yes.
yeah.
You just got lit up. Had a mug at work that said that.
Yeah, he's a character, Lewis Litt, but
Yes,
he's funny. He keeps the show going.
for sure. Yes.
Gavin, any closing words before we get out of here? Well, thank you so much, Shaletha, for joining us today and allowing us to interview you. I'm sorry. I hope everyone that's watching enjoyed the interview. If you have any questions, please drop it below. We'll be putting her information. So if you are looking for a realtor, make sure you contact her. Or if you're willing to start your Airbnb business, She's an investor. She's doing it herself. So you're going to be learning from someone who's actually in the game, not just someone who's talking theory. So with that being said, thank you and have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.